It certainly is convenient that he goes back to the fortress, finds that original green crystal, and somehow off-screen gets his powers back. Laura told him earlier, once it is done, there is no return. Now, obviously she was wrong, but we're not told how Superman managed it, and I find that a little frustrating. Perhaps learning the lesson the hard way is supposed to be the important thing. Now, this is speculation, but I wonder if the fortress wasn't programmed to lie to him, to say that there was no return so that he would understand the magnitude of his mistake. To think, while walking miles in the frozen desert, that he's doomed the planet with his selfishness, and then he's able to get his powers back because he's learned how important giving up his own happiness is for the greater good. Terrance Stamp gives one of the best supervillain performances in superhero movie history. He's the antithesis of Superman. He's arrogant, overbearing, and his commanding presence shows us what Superman could have been if he were completely selfish. Nothing on Earth can stop a Kryptonian, besides kryptonite, of course, which is pleasantly absent in this movie. And so if Superman wanted to, he could just do what Zod does. Fly to the White House, seize control, announce he's the new ruler, and command everyone to kneel before him. Zod isn't an especially deep character, and that's okay because he functions better as an idea. Why does he want control of the world? Because he can. He achieved power on Krypton as a general, but craved unlimited power, so he tried to rule the world. He failed, and Jor-El threw him in the Phantom Zone. Now he's found a planet where nothing can stop him, so he doesn't hesitate. I love Zod for lots of reasons. I love him because he's an ultra-powerful short guy. He's not much taller than me, but he thinks he's the greatest thing there ever was. That's awesome. I love him because he relishes in people bowing before him. Like, he just likes watching people get on their knees when he walks into a room. He has a lot of lines that make him scary and funny all at the same time. He has a real frightening presence, and in the White House he has these great lines like, "I see you are practiced in worshipping things that fly." But then later in the same scene, the president kneels before him finally. Oh God. He corrects the president and says, "Zod." And it's the driest kind of humor ever. With complete seriousness, he calls Earth Planet Houston through half the film, and that's hilarious. Ursa and Non are also delightfully menacing, and I love how they follow him without pause, because Zod's just that cool. He's like, "I'm Zod. Everyone should kneel before Zod." And Ursa's like, "Well, of course, yeah, you're just that awesome." And Non never says anything because he's just big and stupid, so he follows Zod because he has nothing better to do, and the pay probably isn't bad. This movie also gives us the first ever big screen villain team up with Zod and Lex, but it's great because it isn't like Penguin and Catwoman or Sandman and Venom. They don't really team up, and it isn't a contrivance just to get as many characters on screen as possible. Lex offers his services trying to stay alive and hoping to maybe rule Australia, and Zod just keeps using him until he decides he doesn't need him anymore. Gene Hackman's scenes with Terrance Stamp are his best, and I much prefer watching him kissing up to Zod than his prison escape and taking Miss Tessmacher to the Arctic. Oh, and I don't really buy that Tessmacher would help him escape after he almost blew up her mother's home with a missile in the first movie, and I don't really buy that he'd still employ her after she helped Superman escape. It's also an odd coincidence that one of the few crystals he just happens to listen to in the fortress is the one explaining Zod in the Phantom Zone. Still, he's more fun in this movie than he is in the first, and he has that classic Lex Luthor manipulation. He'll say anything to anyone to maneuver himself into an advantage. I really like his part in the fortress toward the end, when he acts like he's going to help Superman lure the 3 Kryptonians in the molecule chamber, and then he turns on Superman and tells them about the whole plan. Superman calls him a poisonous snake. That's how I like my Lex Luthor. There are a few big issues here, and I'll outline them somewhat briefly since talking about Christopher Reeve and Terrance Stamp is a lot more fun. I'll also go into these a little more in detail when I review the Donner Cut. First, there's an obvious lack of consistency between the scenes Lester shot and the scenes Donner shot. Lester was going for a more lighthearted, jokey tone, and some of Donner's more serious stuff doesn't mesh well with it. There's a vast difference between the Kryptonians menacing the astronauts on the moon and then attacking the White House, and the scenes of them tearing up a small southern town and putting their faces on Mount Rushmore. Second, I'm not going to nitpick all the random extra powers that Superman and the Kryptonians have in this movie, but suffice it to say, they can do a lot of things that Superman couldn't do in the original, like lift things with white beams of light, or kiss someone and make them forget something specific. This is somewhat of an issue just because it's inconsistent with the original film, but worse because it's inconsistent throughout this movie. The short reason is Donner only used Superman's classic abilities, and the Lester sequences include new powers, which begs the question of why the 3 Kryptonians don't use those telekinesis beams all over the big fight in Metropolis toward the end. Their short battle in the fortress, where they appear and disappear at random, and then the 3 Kryptonians combine their powers against Superman, is entirely different from how they battle in Metropolis, throwing buses and cars and using heat vision. The biggest problem in the film is that Superman seems to kill his enemies. He and Lois both drop the Kryptonians in the giant chasms in the fortress after he's used the molecule chamber to strip them of their powers, and then they look all satisfied with themselves for getting rid of them. This doesn't sound like Superman at all. I mean, he's against killing people at all costs, and he shares his father's morality. Jor-El put Zod in the Phantom Zone because Kryptonians didn't believe in the death penalty. Apparently, though I haven't seen it, there's a deleted scene in which Lex and the 3 Kryptonians are picked up by police in the Arctic, which was included in a 24-minute longer version shown on TV in 1984. I wish they would have left that in, because then I suppose we could assume Superman knew they weren't going to die. I guess we could assume Superman had netting or warm water or a trampoline at the bottom of those chasms. So I'm of two minds about the magic kiss. On the one side, it's a magic kiss. If Superman could really just kiss Lois and make her forget everything he wanted to, why didn't he do that earlier in the movie? Why not do it at the falls? On the other hand, there is a good reason for why he doesn't want Lois to remember that he's Superman. It's bad enough that he can't have what he wants and be Superman, but it's also making her miserable, knowing what she knows and never being able to be with him. Their conversation about this is a really tender scene, and I especially like how, just after Clark tries to say she'll meet someone else, she responds with, "You're a tough act to follow." So I like the implications of the magic kiss, but it's still too easy. Perhaps a better idea would have been to leave things how they were and then deal with the possibilities of Clark still pursuing a relationship with her while still being Superman in a sequel. That certainly would have been better than what they really did with Superman 3. I'm going to give Superman 2 a 3 out of 4. It had a lot of fresh ideas for Superman that were worth exploring, and one of the best villains in a superhero film. But it has inconsistencies due to production problems that can't be ignored, and the possibility of Superman killing people is inexcusable.